Hello and welcome. And if it's Sunday, it's Free Talk with Mr. B. And with Mr. B, I hand things over to Sameena because she's the host of Free Talk with Sameena.
Yes, thank you so much for the honor, Mr. B. It's absolute pleasure and honor, and I look forward to these sessions as always. So we've been talking about giving back all through our season. That's season three, and very soon we're going to be starting a new season, inshallah. So last week we were speaking about how best and what we can give back to our planet, just to ensure that our future generations have a better world to be in after we're gone. Having talked about that, this week's topic is also a very interesting one. And I would have some questions for Mr. B and then our Professor Mia, who is also with us on this podcast today. So, Mr. B, I'd like to ask you, you have two sons and two grandsons, if I'm right.
Yes, yes.
Yes, and of course, a lot of godsons and god grandsons.
That's for sure.
Absolutely. So, what does this concept mean to you in terms of giving back to your sons and grandsons, and how best do you think one can do so?
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you. Yes, in the nugget number 21 in the book, The Art of Giving Back, it was the highlight for me because I wanted indeed to keep a history of things I did and things I wanted to do, hopefully, and successful at doing, or even some of my failures, so that my sons and grandsons can have a history of what it is was done. As like a time capsule, something to hold all the information. And since we were trying to give back, or I was wondering, when did I start giving back and why? I thought it was good. And I thought it was good enough that they too should consider, and other sons and grandsons and great grandsons to come should consider, what does it mean to give back? And then I also, in that nugget, wrote that every generation or all future generations can survive only when the current and prior generations gave back to those sons and grandsons. Because again, those will be the ones who will take over from us as we go in a resting place, waiting for the future. Because we know not
Yes.
exactly what the future will be. But they will be the ones inheriting the earth, running the earth, taking care of things on the earth. And so all of us should give back to our sons and grandsons so that we can continue our lineage, continue our heritage, continue our survival as a human family. And I thought that was important to include in the nugget, and in this case, nugget number 21.
Yes, thank you for that. So we'll come back in a minute to you with a few
Okay.
more questions for what
Sure.
you've just said. So let me hear from Professor Mia. What is your perspective on giving back to sons, grandsons, or daughters as well? Because as in my family, maybe some families do not have a son. We are six beautiful daughters.
Yes, yes. So good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everybody across the world, and assalamu alaikum to all of us. Um, I love the nugget. I love that it's called son and grandsons. I, for one, am an only child, so I'm a son and daughter rolled into one. And my father used to always refer to me as that. Even before he passed away, he used to always say, "This is my son and daughter rolled into one," etc., etc. And I have myself a daughter, so I don't have a son. So my current family is my mom, myself, and my daughter. So it's three generations of women. But I have to say, when we talk about this giving back, the giving back, I know Mr. B's perspective is purely based on his life and his journey and his wanting to leave behind his legacy, etc. So that's where the sons and grandsons come in. But I purely believe in my heart that his giving back meant for every child, be it boy or girl. Because at the end of the day, we all wish to actually leave behind a legacy that's going to live on, a legacy of something that we're keeping behind that they will keep carrying through. And what is it that we want to do? What is it that we want for them? It's not about the money. The money will run out at some point. We need to give back our lessons, our life's journeys lessons, and we need to give back our faith. What is it that they can get back from whatever goes wrong? And I think we need to give them the tools. We need to allow for our children to learn that if we have made mistakes, it's okay to make these mistakes because we grow from them. So they don't have to feel like they need to be a Mr. or Miss Perfect in being the child that they are, in growing up to be the adults that they need to be. Life's going to always throw you an obstacle. You have to be able to learn what is the tool to be able to convert that obstacle into an opportunity. And that's the giving back that we can give back to our children. So yes, I love this topic. So thank you, Mr. B, for whatever you have put in there. It's amazing.
Great. So yes, having said that, both of you are so beautifully, just explaining the entire process of how you have given back to your children, and of course, like to the children worldwide. In giving to our children, of course, we are reciprocating the same thing. Hopefully, the other children who are watching them also are learning from these children and us. Going back to Mr. B, I would like to ask, there might be times when you see that your sons or grandsons or daughters, anybody in the family, the parents might see that they seem to be forgetting or missing completely out on what has been given forward to them. So, what are some things you might want to advise to parents that will actually bring on the awakening and remind the children that, you need to keep this going?
And it's a good question. The thing is, we keep thinking that our actions or our spoken word or our concept of giving will result exactly in the way we perceive. And it's not the case. Life does not turn out like that. It's not an algorithm where you can put something in, you're going to get exactly what you think you programmed out. It's
Yes.
such that the biggest gift you can give sometimes to our children and grandchildren and potentially great-grandchildren as it's itemized is to give them the gift of example. If we set the right examples, children are absolutely creatures of vision. They do what they see. They do not necessarily do what they're told or what they hear. They tend to do what they see. And so the best thing we can do is to set the example right before them so that they can see what it is we're doing. They can see what we're going through. Some people thought it was strange, but when my kids were young, sometimes my wife and I are disagreeing, and we let them see the disagreement, that everything is not so perfect. And we let them see how the resolution was accomplished by hearing the words of discussion. We let them see us going to work. We let them see us being generous and kind to others. We let them see as much as we could let them see what our life was about. And it turned out that they will perceive what those things were and take it from there. Now, it may not turn out exactly how you want. They may not stay around. They may marry their own spouses and go on with their own lives their way. But at least you set an example, and that would have been the true art of giving back, by setting the example that you yourself perceive as a good example so that they can follow and interpret it the best they can and carry on with that kind of life if possible.
Great. And if you could also tell us, what are some things which you remember? Maybe tell us about two things which your father has given forward to you. And every time you would have thought that, yes, I need to carry this forward. I need to be like my dad in this. What are those two things?
Well, I need to reverse that one a little bit because I think my father, he caused my birth, but he was never there. So again, being a product of a single mom, my mom became mother and father. My grandmother became also, mentor, mother and father. And so having that, the example my father gave was certain things as to what not to be. So I set that example in front of my children also, which they are sons, is not to be delinquent fathers. My father, I was told he was a home builder, but yet he never built a home for maybe even himself and his children. So my big example was to make sure I set up a home, provide a home, make sure my children had homes when they came up, because it was a highlight of our life to say, you must have that shelter. And then it's not outside of the three elements that's exemplified in scripturally for us, where we say we need food, shelter, and clothing. So they always had a place to live, always had food, and always was clothed. And so I always emphasize that that was the emphasis. Also, the children, when they were young, they often probably wonder why they were the only kids that didn't have brand clothing or shoes. And I said, well, it didn't say brand, it says clothing, not brand clothing. It didn't say the exquisite shelter, it just said shelter. And of course, we had good food because we can turn anything into good food and making sure they can be happy. So I think they had that example before them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I totally agree with this because nowadays we see children that, they just put their hand on something in the showroom and the parents are just getting it for them. Those were not the days back in our days, when we had to look for probably, I don't even remember when I got my first shoe or whatever to wear, probably. But
Exactly.
alhamdulillah, my father has always given all the six of us the best of the things, the best of the education, and he ensured that nobody was less in terms of the education or the things which we wore. He would get the same clothing, the same food, and same, he built shelters for us. And alhamdulillah, mashallah, I should say that, not a single penny of loan was, there on us after he left us. In fact, there was just the positives which we could take, after him, alhamdulillah. But there are many, many parents, like you just mentioned, even single mothers. It shows in your character, Mr. B, the way your mother as well as your grandmother have raised you. In all the adversities, you have seen whatever is the best. You have picked up. You have helped those. You have taken those adversities like your building blocks, I must say, and you've built, your character, your personality. Really, hats off to you. Really, Sister Mia would definitely agree with me on this
I
bit.
definitely agree. I have to agree. And I must also give a comment quickly. I must commend Mr. B's mom and I must commend Mr. B's grandmom because those are epitomes of what an empowered woman is.
Oh,
And
yes.
so you don't have to have a certificate next to you to be somebody who's an empowered woman. Those are
Mhm.
empowered women who actually take on those roles and actually inculcate stats and belief systems and inculcate within a man like Mr. B or a child as Mr. B was growing up, where he can become who he is today. And for me, he is the leading example that many other fellow young men need to look up to, that needs to realize I don't have to welt into my system that is not a norm. I'm coming from a broken home. I'm coming from the difficulties. I'm coming from the difficulties of the I don't haves. But the boys don't have to welt in the self-pity and decide, okay, so that gives me a reason now to go and do the wrong. That gives me the reason to become the wrong. It is exactly what he is. Mr. B is the reason why he is the leading example to say to young men out there, I don't need to welt into the pities of what I'm pushed into. I need to make this the motivation for me to become even better, so that at some point I'm going to become better than what I am in now. So I really commend Mr. B's mom and grandmom for being who they are, and Mr. B, of course, for being the leading example he is. And of course, anybody who's Muslim as well, and it's not just to say it's religion, but I think anyone who knows us knows the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is what we follow as a leading example. So the one thing we teach is you have to lead by example. And you as a parent, you as anybody, if you want to wish for your legacy to be kept alive and well, and your legacy is one of respect with dignity and probabilities of good wellness, then obviously you have to lead by example by that. Your dictatorship is not going to get it done. You and children are sponges. Okay, you can tell your child till you blue in your face, do not do this, don't touch that cord, and that child is going to touch the cord. But if they know the reason why, they probably wouldn't do it. If you say, don't touch it because I touched it when I was little and I got burned, they'll be like, okay, so you went through this. I don't want to go through this again. So there's a difference, So yes, we have to definitely lead by example. So thank you, Mr. B, for being you. We truly, truly appreciate you.
And I like the compliments, but I don't even get impressed myself with what I try to have done, because I am very flawed, like all of us men, all of us humans. And I didn't want to hide all of the flaws from my children. And the reason being is because they will discover it regardless. That's what life is. And so it's better to put my flaws out early and say even sorry to them and apologize to them when they either discover it or I executed it in error and caused them pain. And then you remind them, look, I'm still human, I'm still flawed. And so I love the compliments and all of those things, but I too am flawed. But the biggest point was like the lack of a father in my household was, again, we tend to learn what to do, but we have to always remember we can learn what not to do. And that was a
Yes.
big thing for me, because if my father did not want to raise his household after he caused our birth, there is no reason for me to do that too. I just know I was supposed to be a husband in a household, raising my family, unlike my father. If he didn't provide for his household, I knew I needed to provide. So I learned you should not do what he did. And if you were not supposed to provide a home, if he didn't provide a home, I learned that no, I should provide a home. So again, I did not live with him. I did not get to know him. He did not do these things, but I learned from that yes, you do need things. Let me break that cycle and says, I'm not going to be that kind of a person. And so, he is still alive somewhere. I do not communicate. But I learned enough to know what not to do.
Well, I think just given what Mr. B has just said, that he had to learn what not to do, and that's because of that gap that was there because his dad was not there. I think that alone is reason enough to actually kind of say thank you to Mr. B's dad, because Mr. B's dad has given Mr. B that gap, which made him realize this positiveness that he had to take as an outlook for life. So even though it was a difficulty that the father had put him through, it created a gap for Mr. B to grow himself to be who he is today. So that alone is exactly what Sameena kind of said earlier on. You change the adversity into becoming the opportunity, if you know what I mean.
Yes, absolutely. I see Miss Dedra joining us. Hi, Miss Dedra. Good evening.
Hi.
Hello, Miss
So
Dedra.
sorry for being
Assalamualaikum.
late. Forgive me.
No problem.
I took a wrong turn in Ajman, and you know what can happen then. Yeah.
It's tough to get to
Lovely
where you
to
need
see you,
to go.
Dedra.
Huh?
Lovely
What'd you
to
say?
see you.
Oh, lovely to see you too. Gosh, I missed you guys.
Yeah,
So what
absolutely.
are we discussing?
We're discussing about giving back to our sons and grandsons and daughters, and
Yes.
how even in the adversities, we were complimenting Mr. B, as well as I was just about to also speak about Professor Mia, because whatever adversities they saw in their lives actually made them better people. They
Yes.
didn't get bitter, but they got better, is what I would say.
I like
And
that.
how they made the how they
I
made
like
the
that
most.
too.
Thank you. So how they made the most of it, and I really wish and hope, somewhere it pains to see the generation nowadays that we see that the spiritual or the moral perspectives are just depleting by the day, and we're trying our best to pass it on to the next generations, and we just hope that they will continue that legacy. So what is your perspective, Ms. Dedra? Let's hear from you. And how do you think, what's the best way for a parent to give back to their sons and grandsons?
Well, I'll tell you what, now that I've raised mine and my children are all considered grown, I mean, with the exception of my son with autism, who is going to be probably a kid forever, which is fine. But my other ones who are all grown up, two of which are sons, I think one of the biggest things we should have given them more of is independence to make mistakes. We should have let them make a lot more mistakes than we let them make. I think our generation, if we made one big mistake, that's it. We protected them too much. I think that because we had it so rough, especially Gen X, I mean, we had things so tough. And like you said, it made us stronger and better, but there's something in us that we just didn't want them to suffer. We wanted them to have it better than us.
Right.
So I think we made them a little too soft. I'm sorry to say it, but we did. They're too soft now. And I think one of the biggest things you can do for your kids is to let them stumble and fall. Let them make bad choices sometimes because they see the consequences of those choices, you know, and it's hard. It's really hard, you know, to let go and kind of watch them just do something that's gonna have a sting, you know, later. But it's sometimes it may be the best thing ever for them, you know, is to give them those lessons more than anything else, you know, because life is hard. I mean, let's face it, it's, you know, I know there's so many beautiful things about it, and alhamdulillah, you know, thanks God, you know, life can be a blessing and a beauty, you know, and if in everything, but it takes strength, you know, it really does, you know, and just like lions teach their cubs how to hunt and stalk and do what they have to do to get by. I mean, we're supposed to do that for sons and daughters. Don't forget the daughters too.
Absolutely. So I just
my
want to
daughter is more of a lion than my son sometimes. I've been harder on her than them.
Yes, agreed to you. And if you can recall any one thing which your mother has taught you and which you feel that, you know, that has really made you the person you are today.
My mother taught me unconditional love and compassion. And that is the biggest thing I got from her, is because, you know, anyone who's had a chance to experience a mother's love, and you see it really, it chokes me up a little bit. I can't talk about that without choking up some, because, you know, that's a huge gift, you know, to make sure everyone has experienced that at least once. And I didn't get to have it a long time, you know, because she died very young, you know, but I'm very grateful for what I had with her.
Absolutely. We pray and hope that, you know, her blessings are always with you. And
Thank you.
she's in paradise, and
I miss
inshallah.
her every day, every
Yes.
day.
Inshallah, you'll be good. And she's always with you. Her prayers are always with you. So that's why you are who you are. So just believe that.
Absolutely. I think she gave me my sense of humor too, which is great.
That's beautiful in itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She must be feeling proud of the person you are today.
Thank you. Thank you. I think this is the first time I actually let tears fall on this show. So,
well, it's beautiful because it gives us
congratulations. Congratulations. You got tears out of me.
And it's all part, I really think it's all part of the art. The art of giving back, and our conversation about it all year was not to aggrandize or have some self-aggrandizement or even promoting the book. Like I told many, I didn't write the book for some kind of gain. The book really was for the purpose of giving back. And the reason why the art of giving back is like, I just did not know what I was going to leave, so that my unborn great-grandchildren, they're going to come, dead or alive, they're coming, that they should have something to go by, something to add to the information that they have. And there's so much information that comes in at them. If they can pick up on this, and even other spiritual grandsons, like Rashad is my spiritual grandson, and godson, I call him, you know, and I try to share everything I have with him. I meet people in all the countries I've immersed myself in, and have godsons and goddaughters that I keep sharing. The Christina Foundation, what we call the butterflies. I hope to see them in Dubai soon. And so I talk to them, I communicate with them, and I try to give back. And the whole idea is, it's a joy, it's an art, it's a way to give back without holding people hostage in the giving back realm. And you said something very important, especially very, very hard. And it's those mistakes that they need to make without trying to teach them everyone, because every mistake is different and every learning process is different. So that was a big one you just said for me, that I can back away learn from the mistakes. So we in our generation, I'm 60, going on 61 years old. I had to learn a lot of mistakes because I was very uneducated. I was very naive. I came out of high school not knowing so much about the world, went straight from the Caribbean to California. And meeting my wife, I was like, oh my gosh, this is all real, you know? and learning and making a lot of mistakes. Even till today, I make a lot of mistakes in what I do and what I say, and then I still learn from them and go forward. So that was a big one, and thank you for that.
Oh, you're
Mhm.
most welcome.
That's such a beautiful conversation we've just had on the topic. And I really thank all of you for joining us today.
Oh,
And yes,
pleasure.
before we do it, I think I didn't ask Professor Mia, what is that one thing she has gotten from her mom and grandmom, maybe to continue being who she is?
I think what I would have gotten from them, and I still live it through, is resilience. Despite whatever it may be, just keep
Right.
being true to my creator and being true to myself, because I will not, you can't live perfectly, but you can live to the best you can for the
Mhm.
pleasure of your creator. And if that be your basis, then inshallah, you will have the guidance that you need to make the steps forward possible. So mistakes, yes, I agree. And Dedra, welcome. I love your mom, because without your mom, I wouldn't have you. We wouldn't have you.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you.
blessings be with you
Thank
and
you
blessings
so
with you.
much. Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Any concluding remarks, Mr. B?
Well, we actually want to know that one thing from your mom and grandmom.
All right. So the questions to me, I think, when Ms. Dedra was just saying that, you should let them out and you should let them go through, the sunburns and everything. And, they need to trip, they need to fall, they need to get up themselves. One thing, I saw my dad as a single male person in the family, and we are six daughters to my parents and my mom, of course. And every time I saw him, he never he never was angry with us. But the only thing he would ensure that he explains with an affirmation, and he would explain to us everything very clearly, so that once we understand it, it's in our mind, and we would never go against that. Maybe because we were all daughters and there was no other male person, and we only had this one person who was my father to look up to, and we learned from him. I think he raised us like lionesses, all of us, alhamdulillah.
That's
And I've
good.
been,
Oh, lovely.
alhamdulillah, I'm so grateful to Allah for having given me the father like that, and then my mom as well now, who is the strongest person I see, mashallah. No matter what, we try to keep each other, and all of us siblings, we try to keep ourselves with each other. And this is the message I want to give. What I learned from my father is he always kept us together, no matter what. We would fight, we would, tear each other apart at times, but then again, we are still together because, we are sisters, we are siblings, and we are a family. That sentiment, I think, was what I took from my parents, and the respect and the yearning for keeping everyone together. And I just aspire to do that always. And I want to teach this to my future generations also, my nephews,
Inshallah.
nieces, and in case I, inshallah, if I have my own son.
Ameen.
Well, thank you
Yes.
so very much anyway, because we'll move on to the next show. But we really appreciate this show because it meant a lot to all of us.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.